Late into the night, Laura moved through her apartment with the same rhythm she followed every evening. She brushed her teeth, folded a blanket on the couch, checked twice that the front door was locked. Everything was routine, familiar, safe. But something about that night felt different, not in a loud or obvious way, but in the kind of way that made her stomach twist just a little, even if she couldn't explain why. The air was still, stale, almost like it hadn't been breathed in for hours. She noticed it as soon as she turned off the last light in the living room. There was no wind outside, no hum from passing cars, no neighbor footsteps echoing from the hallway like usual. Just complete, unnatural silence. When she got into bed, she pulled the covers up a little higher than usual. Not because of the cold, but because it made her feel protected somehow. The ceiling fan spun lazily above her, casting slow, looping shadows across the walls. She watched them move, then stop. Had it really stopped, or was she imagining things? She sat up slightly. The fan was still spinning, but now she was alert. Every small sound, every creak, every shift of the building made her muscles tense. Except there weren't any sounds. That's when it hit her. It wasn't just quiet. It was silent. Not the kind of silence you get when everyone's asleep. The kind that feels like something is waiting. She tried to shake it off. "I'm tired," she whispered to herself. "It's just in my head." But even her voice felt wrong in that moment, like it didn't belong in the room. Still, she laid back down, eyes on the ceiling, listening for anything. But the silence stayed, deep, pressing, almost like it was alive. And that's when she felt it. Not a noise, not a movement, but a presence. Faint, barely there, but real. Something was coming. She didn't know from where, or why, but the night wasn't done with her yet. Then it happened. A whisper, so faint it could have been the wind, if there had been any. It came from the hallway, just outside her bedroom door. Laura froze, her body stiff beneath the blanket, breath caught in her throat. She didn't move, didn't blink. For a second, she thought she might have imagined it. Maybe it was the building settling, or her tired brain playing tricks. But then she heard it again. Laura, it was her name. Soft, drawn out, like someone testing the word for the first time. Her heart slammed against her ribs. She sat up, eyes locked on the closed door. She wanted to call out, to ask who was there, but her mouth wouldn't open. She waited. Nothing. The silence returned. Heavier now. She climbed out of bed slowly, careful not to make a sound. Her bare feet touched the cold floor, and for a moment she just stood there, staring at the door like it might open on its own. Then, another whisper. Closer. Laura, it wasn't aggressive. Not angry. But it wasn't friendly either. It was empty. Cold. Curious. She reached for her phone on the nightstand, turned on the flashlight, and pointed it at the door. The beam of light cut through the darkness, but revealed nothing unusual. No shadows. No movement. She took a step forward. Then another. Her hand gripped the doorknob. Ice cold. She pressed her ear against the wood, holding her breath. Silence. And then, just as she was about to pull back, 3 soft knocks. Right on the other side. Laura stumbled back from the door, the breath catching in her throat. Her phone almost slipped from her hand. The knocks hadn't been loud. They were gentle, deliberate, like someone who already knew she was listening. She stood frozen, her back against the wall, eyes locked on the doorknob, waiting for it to turn. But it didn't. The silence returned, thick and choking. Summoning what little courage she had, she inched forward again. Slowly, carefully. She gripped the knob, counted to 3 in her head, and opened the door. The hallway was dark, but not completely. The moonlight spilling through the living room window lit the space just enough to see that no one was there. She stepped out, her flashlight sweeping across the floor and up the walls. Nothing. No figures. No movement. But the air had changed. It was colder. Still. And the sound, or rather the absence of sound, was louder than before. She followed the chill, past the kitchen, past the coat rack, until she reached the guest room. The door was closed. She hadn't touched it in weeks, maybe longer. That room was barely used. Just some old furniture, boxes she never unpacked, things she didn't care to look at. Now, though, it was as if the room was calling to her. Her hand trembled as she reached for the knob. It was even colder than the one in her bedroom. She opened it. The room greeted her with stillness. The kind that feels staged, like a photo of a place rather than the place itself. The flashlight's beam swept over the covered furniture, casting long, soft-edged shadows across the floor. And then, right as she stepped inside, the door behind her creaked and shut on its own. Click. Locked. Laura spun around, grabbing the doorknob. She twisted it hard. Once, twice, but it wouldn't budge. Locked from the outside. No, she whispered, panic rising in her chest. No, no, no. She pounded on the door, but it made no sound. Not even an echo. And then the voices came back. Not one. Many. Whispers. Layered over each other. Overlapping. As if a dozen mouths were speaking at once. Some were too fast to understand. Others slow and drawn out like underwater moans. They weren't yelling. They didn't sound angry. But they were urgent. Desperate. One voice rose above the others, clearer than before. Help me. Laura backed away, light shaking in her hand, trying to see where the voices were coming from. But there was no one there. Just the dusty shapes of furniture covered in white sheets. She turned slowly, and that's when she saw it. A shape, small, maybe child-sized, standing in the far corner of the room. Perfectly still, unmoving, just a faint outline in the shadows. "Who's there?" she whispered. The voices stopped. Silence fell, and then the figure tilted its head. Not fast, not sudden, just a slow, unnatural tilt, as if studying her. Laura took a step back. Her hand brushed against something. A box, maybe, but it toppled over and hit the floor with a loud thud. The figure vanished. Gone. No sound. No movement. Just gone. But in its place, a soft, distorted whisper drifted through the room. "You can hear us now." Laura's breath caught in her throat. "You can hear us now." She turned in a slow circle, the flashlight trembling in her hand. The room hadn't changed, not on the surface. Same boxes, same furniture under white sheets. But the air was different, denser, pressing in on her from all sides. It felt like being underwater, like something unseen was moving all around her, brushing past her skin, circling her. The whispers returned, louder this time, but still impossible to fully understand. Half sentences, broken words, a mixture of voices in English, layered and tangled like they were fighting to be heard. Then one voice cut through them. A single phrase, crystal clear, "Don't leave us here." Laura's eyes widened. She stepped back toward the door, tried the knob again, still locked. She started banging on it, shouting, "Who are you? What do you want from me?" The response wasn't words. It was a scream, but not like someone in pain. It was like hundreds of overlapping voices all crying out at once. And then silence. A click. The door unlocked. Laura didn't wait. She yanked it open and stumbled out into the hallway, slamming it shut behind her. She backed away, heart pounding, trying to catch her breath. But something held her in place. A feeling. They weren't trying to hurt her. They were begging for help. And for the first time, she didn't just hear them. She understood them. Not just the words, the feeling behind them, the fear, the loneliness, the weight of being trapped, forgotten, silenced. She stood there in the dim hallway, trying to steady herself. And that's when she knew this wasn't over. They weren't finished, and neither was she. Laura leaned against the wall, her chest rising and falling with shaky breaths. Her legs wanted to run, to grab her keys, leave the apartment, and never look back. But she didn't move, because deep down she couldn't. Something had changed. The voices weren't just noise anymore. They had form, emotion, intention, and now they were everywhere. She could hear them behind the walls, faint whispers bleeding through the drywall like static, a soft hum beneath the silence, as if the building itself had become a speaker for something else. She turned toward the guest room door again. It was quiet now. No voices, no shapes, just that feeling pressing at her chest, a need to understand. Her mind raced. Why her? Why now? She remembered her grandmother used to say that some people are just open, that they don't even know they're a door until something tries to come through. Was that what this was? Had she become a door? Laura's hand brushed against the hallway wall as she walked past, and a jolt shot through her, like static electricity, but colder, sharper. She pulled her hand back and stared. Her fingertips felt wrong, tingly. The whispers grew louder. No words this time. Just that low, layered murmuring, like 100 people trapped in a dream, trying to speak through sleep. She pressed her hands over her ears. "Stop," she whispered. "Please stop." And they did. Instantly, the silence that followed was deafening. She stood in the middle of the hallway, alone, waiting for something to happen. But nothing did. That was the worst part. The waiting. She knew they were still there, watching, listening, and now, waiting for her. The apartment felt different now. Not haunted, not exactly. More like aware. Laura stood still, the silence wrapping around her like fog. The whispers were gone, but the feeling remained. That pressure in the air, that weight in her chest. She walked slowly toward the living room, her footsteps muffled, like the floor didn't want to make a sound. The moonlight poured through the window, casting pale shapes across the walls. Everything looked normal, but felt wrong. And then she saw it. On the coffee table, a notebook, old, frayed around the edges. It hadn't been there before. She approached it carefully, heart pounding, and flipped it open. The pages were filled with writing, but not in her handwriting. Dozens of phrases scribbled in different styles, different levels of clarity. Some shaky, some almost etched in anger. All in English. "We're still here. She locked us away. Help us find the door. You can hear us now." Laura's hands trembled. She flipped further, and the last page was blank, except for one single line, written clean and slow, as if someone had taken their time. "You are the key." She stared at the words. Somewhere inside, something clicked. This wasn't a haunting. It was a message, a calling. These voices, these people, or whatever they were, weren't here to scare her. They were stuck, lost in some place between silence and memory. And she was the only one who could hear them. The whispers didn't return. Not that night. Laura stayed awake until dawn, notebook in hand, reading every word again and again. And when the sun finally rose, flooding the apartment with warm light, she didn't feel afraid anymore. She felt ready. Whatever had found her, whatever had chosen her, it wasn't the end. It was the beginning.